Are we getting too fat for the world?
Hello and welcome to the Mark and Pete Show. Yes, a mother and her two daughters were actually traumatized by Thai Airways staff who came at them with tape measures telling them that they were too big for their business class seats. This disgusting experience, as it was described, was something that many people seem to be experiencing, and that is that if they do seem to be slightly larger than normal, is it right that particular companies have the right to do this sort of thing? Well, it's caused a hoo-ha. Many people actually say that, well, actually, it's not the responsibility of companies. We're just, as a species, getting too big for our boots. So what do we do about it? Do we get down to the gym? Do we simply have to go outside running around aimlessly just to shed the pounds? Or maybe there is a different solution. Perhaps it's time to put things in proportion. If you've overindulged and need a diet and thinking of some exercises, perhaps instead go on a retail riot and just wear bigger sizes. Yes, Clergyman Pete, I know that's possibly one solution for you, but maybe it is true that we are outgrowing the world in which we built.
Yes. I think that the designs, it's obvious that the designs that we have for seats on aeroplanes, and I suppose it's going to get to the stage as the door to your bedroom. It's not necessarily big enough for you. It's made for a certain size. Now we can see this as people have got taller since the Middle Ages. When we see people getting taller, we look back and say, "Oh, the doors are shorter. Then people must have been shorter. We couldn't have doors that size now." And it's just a bit of self-knowledge, but a willingness to look critically at oneself would reveal the fact that if you get too fat, things are just not the right size for you. Now, it can come as simple as getting into your car. If you have a huge belly, Mark, then one problem you will have is, you won't be able to sit easily behind the wheel in a normal car. I know some of them are adjustable, but there are things that just aren't the right size. Now, there are two ways you can respond to that. Much of the retail clothing industry simply responds by making clothes bigger.
Exactly.
So that's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to say, well, look, it's actually unhealthy to be that fat. Whatever people say there is, this is not a moral judgment. Well, you could make a moral judgment, but what I'm going to say is a moral judgment, which is that if you are too fat, it's bad for you. And in fact, you can go, now there are plenty of stats to back this up, gentle listeners, so don't attack me for this, but it's just the case that if you have a waist that's bigger than 37 inches, or if you're a woman and you have a waist bigger than 31.5 inches, you're going to get health complications. It doesn't matter what excuses you come up with. That will just be the case. Actually, even if it's not fat causing it, just having a waist that big means that, for one thing, the heart isn't going to cope with pumping the blood all the way around. There were lots, however, of problems, of health problems, risk of disease, from having a waist 37 inches, over 37 inches for a man. And so it's just simply the case. So should we, or rather I'm saying it's a bad idea, I'm actually making the point, maybe then it's a bad idea to just encourage this, even though I encourage people being that size. I mean, I know that some people are just bigger, they're tall, big and wide. But if you're doing it when you don't need to be that big because you've piled on the pounds by eating too many mince pies or whatever it might be, then it's no good saying, well, I'm part of the fat acceptance movement or the body positivity movement. Facts, as that famous commentator Ben Shapiro says, facts don't care about your feelings. And we might extend it to say, fat doesn't care about your feelings. It has the effect, whatever you feel about it.
Well, okay, so there's a couple of things to address here. So first of all,
go ahead.
There's something that's within your own control, i.e. yourself
Yes, yeah.
belief in terms of your disciplines, and of course, if you do have that discipline, then of course most people will lead a healthy lifestyle. But of course, there will be some people who will say, "But hold on, they may have a medical problem." So there are always going to be exceptions. But I want to get to a bigger point, which is coming back to the original case. Is it actually, ironically, in this strange world that we're developing for ourselves, a taboo to point out that somebody is large? And dare I say, should we even be very cautious about saying the word fat? So in the example that was given, they actually said too big, that was repeatedly echoed down the rows.
But these were people whose English wasn't the first language. So
of course, but
too
nevertheless,
big.
It raises the point.
Get off, fatty. They might have said if they had been able to.
Should they even point it out, or is it really a taboo? But maybe you're actually doing somebody a bit of good by highlighting it.
Look, the Bible speaks against people losing self-control, and
I believe you're going to mention a quote, which I think for our rather timid listeners might find this a little bit brutal, but do go ahead.
In a little bit of preparation off air before we started this episode, we were looking at what the Bible had to say, and Proverbs 23 verse 2 says, this is in the Authorized Version, the King James Version, it says, "And put a knife to thy throat, if there be a man given to appetite." So if you're given to eating and drinking too much, it's something that needs to be forcibly stopped, I suppose, is what it's saying here.
I think for health and safety and compliance reasons, I think we should say to our listeners, do not take that literally.
Don't actually put a knife to your throat. No, it's...
it's a metaphorical position, but
most commentators would say it just forcibly stop yourself, or you're going to be in trouble. Now, I think that's right, but it's interesting that it makes such a strong case. And how would you respond to other other problems that are causing issues? I mean, if someone was smoking, is bad for you, and there have been steps have been taken to get people to stop it. Would you? Do you have an education campaign? Do you, in fact, as you were hinting at there, Mark, do we ridicule fat people? Is that actually a good way of helping them? Oi, fatty, get your lard arse out of that seat might be something. Not that I would say. I would not say that. But I'm just saying, if a sort of an attitude in which you are unforgiving of the weight, not of the person, but of the weight on the person, because it's giving them health issues, or will do in the future.
I've got mixed feelings on this subject. On the one hand, I think we've all gone through peaks and troughs with our weight over the years. And somebody, almost certain our listeners will be thinking, yes, I've had to stretch my notch on the belt, male or female, whoever they are, at some point in their lives. It has happened. And so when I look at people that would be perhaps deemed to be clinically obese, I do have to always have the reservation is, why is it that they're in that state? Because I do know that naturally it's not always because of overindulgence. It could be through something else. However,
possible.
We're not talking about the vast majority. It is an issue where, and many medical experts have said they are extremely concerned, particularly in America and the United Kingdom and in the developed world, that actually children as well, so we've been talking about adults, but it does apply to children, are actually now clinically obese. And that is a concern. Now, it is, in my opinion, something to do with education. Something's gone wrong.
I agree with you, yes.
What I would say here is there is another factor, because it isn't just about education. It's also about the food products that we put on the shelves.
Yes.
And even innocently, if you buy something that claims that it's healthy, says that perhaps it is your 5 a day, folks, but your 5 a day also contains masses of fat and sugar, well, you could innocently find yourself actually overindulging, thinking that you're doing the right thing. Yes. So in my opinion, I think that both medical experts, including government and individuals, where we're all, responsible for our own well-being as well as our families, need to really reevaluate what's happening, because year after year after year, and we've covered this subject on previous podcasts, but in slightly different forms, and yet the irony in the times that we've been doing these over the years, the statistics show that things are getting worse. So I think that to come to a solution on this, I actually genuinely believe now that that there needs to be harsher measures put in place. And dare I say that this is something that I know has been mooted. Yes, a sugar tax was considered. I'm not entirely sure that was the solution to the problem. But what I do think is a solution potentially is that things, first of all, need to happen at school, because clearly schools are there for education. And education is about informing children, as well as their parents or guardians, to ensure that they are having a healthy diet and control it better. Now, I know that the new government, the old Boris there, he's back in again, and he's paving the way for the vision for the United Kingdom. As a simple example, Donald Trump doing the same with the US, I'm sure. I'm sure many people are happy about that. But the point being is, our leaders need to have a much more effective health policy, because at the moment, what we're doing is putting more of a burden on the system and ourselves. And so I see this as actually something that's a priority in society, and I don't think it's talked about.
I agree with you. And you just in the middle of what you were saying, I agree entirely with what you just said, and endorse what you just said. That you slipped into a sort of into putting together sugar. It could be high sugar and high fat, you were saying. And now, one of those is very harmful. Obviously, if you eat too much of everything, it's going to be bad for you. But
yes.
A high-fat diet, just generally, is better for you, and you will lose weight. You will get to a healthy weight. Not only that, but fat contains valuable nutrients. Low carbohydrate, and especially sugar, diet will cause you to lose weight. Low carbohydrate, high-fat diet is the best for you. Now, what we're talking about is reducing carbohydrate, not removing it. I know that some diets are around which say to remove it altogether. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying reduce it. So basically the opposite proportion to what is currently on the National Health Advice on diet. Not mainly carbohydrate. Get most of your energy from fat, and it's rather complex, but as to why that's better. But most fattening of all. So what I would say is people are being misinformed. I used to think, as I was hinting at with my thing, oi lardas, and that was meant to be a humorous comment. I don't think you should say that, because what has happened, I found, when looking into this, and if you want to read something about this, there's a book called Stop Feeding Us Lies by Charlie Spedding, not a sponsor, but we'll put a link in the description so you can take a look at that, which talks about this. It could be that you're fat. It could be that you're so big that you don't fit into an aeroplane seat. But the thing is, it may not be your fault. It's that you've been poorly educated. You've been told
exactly.
Change your diet. Have a look at this Charlie Spedding diet, or look up the Banting diet. This is not something that we haven't known. We've known it certainly since the studies into diabetes in the late 19th century. So have a look. Fat in the diet doesn't equal fat on the body. Carbohydrates in the diet, oh yes, you're going to pile it on. So make those changes. It seems counterintuitive these days, and I end up saying, oh no, don't eat that because there's too much fat in it. What am I saying? It's the carbohydrates that are a problem. Like in chips, the problem is when you eat chips. I'm talking about the British version of fried potatoes. It's the potato bit that's the fattening bit with the carbohydrate. Cut out the carbs and you'll be slimmer. But just in closing, I just say, look, people aren't to be blamed necessarily for being overweight. But that's just the moral decision. Just practically, we want them to lose weight anyway.
Well, there is, but I think there is a point of discipline in terms of lifestyle
Yes.
change. Now,
Oh,
I
yeah.
know that
It would still
we're going
take
to
discipline. Yeah, absolutely.
I know every generation talks about best practice, but
Yes.
one thing that is still echoed today is the fact that you can't just adjust your diet. You've got to adjust your lifestyle, i.e., get up and do something. Now, some people argue that we're leading too much of a sedentary lifestyle. Now, that may be the case, and let's be honest, folks. Not everybody wants to sort of just go to the gym. Not everybody likes running or just playing a sport. I understand that. But usually most people like walking, or they like doing some form of physical activity, even if it's not just sort of housework or gardening or something which is, of a physical nature. And I think that in this education, along with many other strands of how do you improve your lifestyle, I still think that there isn't what I'll call an optimum program. And this is my point about all of this. We can sit here and criticize people, and that's fine. That's easy to observe who is big and who isn't, for whatever reason. But what I am a bit worried about is that people focus a lot on the diet. And I can see that they make a lot of money out of it from selling books or doing appearances, etc. And that's good. That's only one component, one jigsaw piece of a much larger picture. There is everything from, the way you lead your life, your work, the way you deal with your family, the way you are educated. Yes, so there are many facets to sort of improving your well-being. And that's why I think that governments are actually well positioned, because they can actually commission clinical studies. But I fear that the clinical studies are piecemeal and don't really cover what is the best way in an ideal world of actually thinking about how you look after yourself. Can you actually, as an individual, everybody starts to think, yes, I don't have that. I don't have the complete guide. Now, some people might be sort of screaming, say, but I know a book on this and I know a book on that. Great, do it. But I don't think governments have helped enough. And I certainly think if we take, say, for example, the United Kingdom, which as the flagship on NHS, that's the National Health Service, it's done exceptionally well to add value to the community. However, it's heavily burdened, and it's trying to solve the symptom and not the cause. Yes, and that's where I think there's an opportunity for certainly government minister to think, hold on, maybe we need to sort of tackle this in a different way. Yes. There was one thing to conclude on this, and going back to the airline incident, it is interesting that, albeit a different airline, American Airlines has a particular view on this. It states, if a customer's body extends more than 1 inch beyond the outermost edge of the armrest and a seatbelt extension is needed, another seat is required.
Yes.
So
pay up. Yes, got to pay up for
folks, if you are a frequent traveller and perhaps you don't want to extend not just your belly but your wallet, maybe that in itself will also be an incentive. Well, look, listeners, what do you think about this subject? Are you disgusted by what actually happened with Thai Airways? Maybe you think actually now is the time to be a little bit more candid with your views. And maybe that might prompt people to do something. Why not log on to markandpete.com and let us know your thoughts? Well, hopefully that was a healthy discussion on this subject. Join us again next time. More colourful conversations with Clergyman Pete and Businessman Mark.